Happy Friday, everybody! As the church is the bell, it is 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on October 20th, 2023. Happy Friday to all of you on this Friday evening, and hope everybody's enjoying their October and their fall season so far. And right now, I'm just relaxed and ready to put this interview for you guys as I'm just watching right now this rivalry game between the Astros Rangers, where some of the brawl just happened before we went on the air. And I hope all of you are enjoying your Friday night. And before we get started, I just want to thank everybody who has tuned in, who had tuned in to my birthday stream this past Friday on the 13th, Friday the 13th, last Friday. It was a great, spectacular birthday stream. Normally, I would do another birthday stream after the birthday countdown, but on the 14th, I was away um, at a hotel, water park, so I couldn't do any birthday streams. But on your birthday, you're supposed to spend time to yourself anyway and just enjoy your birthday and be out of the house. The best you can, that is. So that is basically what my birthday plans were. And yeah, so I just want to thank everybody who tuned into that birthday countdown stream and those who were a part of it because without you guys, no, the stream would have been successful like that was. So thank you all once again. So this episode of 2000 Hangouts, episode number 116, we'll be interviewing Christian Carrión, who does a podcast called Tell Us About Yourself. And what that podcast is about was basically him interviewing contestants who are on game shows such as Fortune, mostly Jeopardy, other game shows from the past that he wanted to do this podcast about, which is a very nice podcast because yes, the contestants are the stars, but we never really got to see them more of their background, more of their personality off camera. So it's a very clever, cool podcast. So, and we also got to talk about in this interview his experience at the Gameshow Show and also the podcast he used to do before his Tell Us About Yourself podcast. We also talked about his other favorite game shows and all that cool stuff. So, now for the next almost 40 minutes, we are going to be playing this interview for you guys. As I'll be keeping on that chat and all that good stuff while I'm watching the ball game. So, hope you enjoy episode number 116 of Chilling3000's interview with Christian Carrión. Kristen and David from the past, take it away. And hello, everybody. I am David here. Welcome back to this interview here on the David Dawson Network. And today I'm here with Kristen Carrión. Let me try that again. One, two, three. Hello, everybody. I'm David here. Welcome back to this interview here on the David Dawson Network. And today I'm here with Kristen Carrión. How are you doing?
Thank you, David. I'm doing wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here.
Same with you. So, you are the host of Tell Us About Yourself podcast, and that is a show where you talk to a bunch of game show contestants from game shows. Um, Tell us about getting into game shows early part in the night before we get to the podcast.
Sure. I mean, game shows have been a part of my life for just about as long as I've been alive. When I was really young, my father was an art teacher. He was a high school art teacher. And so he was out during the day before I started going to school. And when I was home with my mom it was the early 90s, and so it was a lot of reruns of game shows on the USA Network and on the Family Channel. And my mom had her soap opera that she used to watch, Days of Our Lives, that was on during the day. But anything else was a game show. That's just what the type of TV that my mom enjoyed while we were home, and eventually it became the type of TV that I enjoyed. And I loved it. I loved how happy it was. I loved how colorful it was. I loved the music. I loved seeing people, laugh and scream and clap and hug and be happy. it all just appealed to me, and I think that eventually my mom's interest in game shows became my interest, and so
Yeah,
I think that eventually my mom just sort of had it on TV to keep me happy. And I think she enjoyed how much I enjoyed game shows. And so that's how that love of this type of TV started. And then as I got older, I decided that I wanted to. I wanted to do something in game shows, whether it was a contestant or whether it was as a host, which has always been my dream, is to be a game show host. Everything I've done in my life has been with that goal in mind, and so I went to a training class at the public access station in New Haven, Connecticut with my dad, became a public access TV producer, which felt like I was close to that dream. And I got to produce an art instructional show with my dad. And that was a lot of fun. It was experience being in a studio behind cameras and a control room, directing and switching and setting up
fun
lights
internship there.
and just sort of doing that whole thing. And so eventually that became a love of broadcasting in general, with game shows as a focus, but I just love broadcasting. So I went to school for broadcast journalism. I did a lot of game show related stuff in school. And that time became a contestant on a few shows: The Price is Right, Millionaire, Hip Hop Squares, The Chase, Let's Ask America. And just getting to live my dreams in that way has been really fun. And nowadays I work with the National Archives of Game Show History, producing Tell Us About Yourself, and I get to talk to other people who have that interest and have that joy about them. And it's been a dream come true being able to do all these things.
And tell us on how you started to come up with the Tell Us About Yourself podcast.
Well, the way I came about it was, so this was during COVID. I was working at a hotel and I got laid off because there was no more in-person work to do, and so I was home, not working, and I sensed an opportunity to become a broadcaster in the way that I wanted to do it on my own terms. And so I bought a
Hmm.
microphone, I bought some soundproof foam on Amazon, I emptied my closet, lined the closet with foam, hung up the microphone, and suddenly I had a studio. I was doing a podcast called Stranger Than Christian, where every week I would talk to a complete stranger from somewhere around the world, and it was always our first time speaking. And so it was at that time, during the era of social distancing and lockdown, it was really great to have that ability to connect with other people, because I don't know how I would have that opportunity otherwise. I'm a people person, and so I think I need that. I need that connection in order to thrive.
And what was
But I
that
also got
podcast
to
called again? Sorry to interrupt, but
the
what was?
original one was called Stranger Than Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it was just a different total stranger every week, and I eventually talked to people from all over the world, from every state, from dozens of different countries. It really took off, and it resonated with a lot of people, um, who I think just sort of craved that like regular type of conversation. And it was great to have that connection, and it was also great to develop my skills as a broadcaster. I got to practice in front of a microphone for an hour a week every week for 2 years, and so it was that idea that I thought would suit really well to what the National Archives of Game Show History was doing. I had a meeting with the people at the Strong Museum and the co-founders of the archive about how we can promote each other. And out of nowhere, I mean, it wasn't out of nowhere. I had a plan. I did want to ask about it, but something struck me as this is the right time to ask. And I said, I've been doing a podcast where I talk to complete strangers every week for going on 3 years now. It would be really great if you let me do this, but talking to contestants, because the archive is preserving the sets and the cards and the props and all that, and talking to the hosts and producers part of it. And so
Hmm.
I think that it would be really great to have that documented. And I think I'm the person to do that. I have the journalistic experience, I have the podcast experience, and luckily they fell in love with the idea. That was in October of 2022. We launched about a month later, and it's been 50 episodes so far, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's the question is that we're coming to a year of of the podcast. Um, and with your other podcast, the Stranger Than Christian podcast, how did you find those connections with strangers? How did you look them up? How did you find the right people?
That's a great question, and I am if I could be personal, I'm very proud of the way that I did this. So what I did was um, I set up a bunch of ads on Reddit, and not necessarily ads, but posts talking about my show. And I went to all the podcasting subreddits because I figured anybody who's there has a good microphone. They'll sound good if I talk to them on the show. And I said, if you'd like to talk to me about whatever you want for as long as you want, send me an email. And I made an email address specifically for the show. And people reached out, and a lot of people reached out, and even more people reached out. And I had no idea I had no idea that this project would take on uh, as many listeners as it did and as many participants as it did. And so I used a website called Calendly, an app and a website called Calendly to set up interviews. It was great. I wasn't working, so I could almost schedule this like it was my job. Every
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would record an interview. Thursday, I would edit. Friday, I'd put the finishing touches on it, and I have it ready to release on Saturday morning. Um, it was a great uh, it was a great way to discipline myself and give myself my own schedule. But that's how I got the people. I really just went out to Reddit and asked anybody who would be interested in talking to come talk to me.
Yeah.
And I got a wide variety of people. I mean, I've talked to people from all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds. It was really a very enriching experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why on this program, I love to interview people most every week or every other week, depending on my schedule, because I want to get to know the person, have those connections, like you said, just have a good time. That's what interviews are all about. And I've been doing interviews on this show since last year, and that's one of my favorite hobbies as well.
Absolutely. Oh,
Uh,
I think it's the best part of interviewing. I mean, it's the best way to get to know somebody. You think about
oh
the
yeah,
way you meet people in real life. Those are essentially interviews when you talk
yeah,
to somebody you've never talked to and introduce yourself and tell them what you're about and listen to what they're about. I mean, that to me it's so much fun. And again, I'm somebody who likes being in front of people. I like talking to people. I'm enjoying talking to you right now, and so that is an activity that I just really like. I'm going to be that old person I think in line at the supermarket talking to complete strangers. That will be me one day. But for now, I'm doing a podcast. So
yeah. And I never really tried interviewing with my quote unquote strangers, just people I know on the internet, friends, online friends, etc. But who knows? Maybe in the near future, if my show needs that type of format, maybe I can look up people who are going through their careers because it's all about that experience and promotion. You know?
sure. Well, I would even say right now. I mean, you're talking to I don't know you. I've never met you before, and you've never met me
Oh yeah,
before. But you've listened to my podcast, so you know my voice and you know what I'm about.
yeah.
But essentially, I'm a stranger to you, and I think you're doing a wonderful job. I mean, this is what
Yeah.
interviewing a complete stranger is. I was so nervous when I first did. My first episode of Stranger Than Christian back in 2020, I was so nervous. I wanted to go well, and I wasn't sure that it would go well. And I remember just
Oh
being
yeah.
so nervous for it. And I set up my TV with like a 10-hour loop of the ocean so that if ever I
Yeah.
get nervous while I'm talking to this person, I can just look at the TV and
Oh
it's the
yeah.
ocean there
That's
and I can
cool.
kind of calm down.
Yeah. That's cool. And is your old podcast still up for people can listen
It is.
or
Yes, it
listen?
is. So Stranger Than
Okay.
Christian is
Cool.
still available on all the services, Spotify, Apple, everything. Yeah, Stranger Than Christian. It's like Stranger Than Fiction, but with my first name instead of the last word there. And yeah, there's about
All right.
a little more than 80 episodes there. I'm very proud of it. And yeah, tell us about yourself as well. We're up to episode 50, and those are all available, all the same services.
Cool beans. And the next question is tell tell us the game shows you were a contestant on. Just to recap.
Sure. So I was a contestant on 6 different shows. So when I turned 18, that was the year Bob Barker retired, and I wanted to see him before he went away. And so
Oh, okay.
I got to see him 3 weeks before he retired. God rest his soul. We miss him
Oh
every
yeah.
day. But I got to see The Price is Right. My parents paid for the airplane to get me from Connecticut to Los Angeles, and I waited in line for 3 days to get into the show. I was first in line. and they called me down. I was one of the first four contestants. It was a life changing experience. I think about it all the time because of all the experiences I've had on game shows. That was the first, and it was again just such a transformative experience to be in that room, to be in that studio where they had recorded the show for 35 years at that point was just so remarkable, and I felt like I was home. It felt like a religious experience, and I had a wonderful time. I won a
Awesome.
sofa. I got to spin the wheel. I lost a car. I didn't get to the showcase, but again, just the time of my life.
That's
Then
incredible.
yeah, oh, it was beyond description. I'll never
What
in all the other shows I've done, I never recaptured that particular feeling. It was
what was
unbelievable.
Bob like between commercials with the contestants?
Bob was really fun between the commercials. So he would it I think it was different when I went because again, it was 3 weeks before he retired, and so they were
Yeah.
building up this sort of frenzy, and everybody wanted to ask him, why is he leaving? What is he going to do when he's retired? And the basic sort of questions. And he was
Hmm.
very friendly. He would take questions from the audience. I remember specifically somebody asked him about his pets. He had like a bunny and a dog at home that he took care of. Somebody gave him a a baseball bat. They were from Louisville, Kentucky, so they gave him like a Louisville Slugger as a gift. And he was always really great with the not only the contestants but the audience as well. I remember in
Oh yeah.
particular this was sort of near the end. I wasn't doing well most of the show. I got up on stage near the end, and it was during one of the last commercials before I made it up. And he said, you waited in line 3 days and you're blowing it. And I said, well, that's okay. I said, look where I am, And he said, look where you
Yeah.
are, and you're going to stay there if you don't get with it. And that was it was incredible to have him address me directly because he is one of my broadcasting heroes.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, Bob was great with the contestants and with the audience altogether. He was a master of that.
And what was it like on your other game, so Max game? What was it like being on that show?
Match Game was fun too. Match Game was different because there were so many celebrities there, and there were people that I never thought I would meet in person. There were people like Wayne Newton there. I mean, Alec Baldwin was the host, so right away, I mean, I never thought I'd meet Alec Baldwin. Raven
Yeah.
Simone. It was just wonderful people, and it was like a party. I felt very comfortable on Match Game because at this point I had already been on quite a few shows, and so I was sort of aware of the process. Um,
Oh
I
yeah.
was very confident in myself. I was very confident in my knowledge of the game and how it worked and what to do and what not to do. And it was just a lot of fun. All the shows I've been on were fun. They're just fun in different ways. Like again, The Price is Right because it was my first one was just like a magical sort of experience for me.
And all in
Match
and
Game
out.
was like yeah, Match Game was like going to a party with a bunch of celebrities. It was unbelievable.
Nice. And Price is Right is all live to taped. When when Bob was around, it was live to tape 1 hour. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's a great observation. Yeah, Bob Barker was a master of bringing the show in on time. And they used to
Yep.
say that he had a sort of clock in his head where he can tell where he needs to speed up, where he has time to slow down and talk to a contestant, where he has time to play around and be goofy and be fun, which of course is what made the show what it was for, 35 years. And
Yep.
he was great at that. And when you go see the show, it's an hour show, and it takes just about an hour because they pretend they're live. They pretend,
Yeah.
that there's no room to edit, and they really don't edit. Well, at least they didn't back then. I
Hmm.
think they edited a lot now, but back then it was yeah, like you said, live to tape is a great phrase for it.
Yeah. And back to your Tell Us About Yourself podcast. Was it tough to track down former contestants, or
So could
was
you
it
ask one
easy?
more time?
On your Tell Us About Yourself podcast, was it tough to track down former contestants from certain game shows, or was it easy from the start?
It wasn't. It was not easy from the start. Absolutely not. And the way I first started was I did it the way I used to do Stranger Than Christian. I put out an ad on some of the game show subreddits and the Jeopardy subreddit and all that. And I said, I'm working with the National Archives of Game Show History, interviewing contestants. If you've been a contestant on a show and you'd like to talk to me, fill this form
Hmm.
out and I'll be in touch. And so a lot of people got in touch, and I realized that uh, there are millions of people out there in the world, and
Oh yeah.
every single one of them has been on Jeopardy. So I got to talk to a lot of people who were on Jeopardy, and then eventually, and it's funny. This goes back to an aspect of my love of game shows that started when I was like a young teenager. I used to collect VHS tapes. I was a tape trader back in the day when
Oh yeah.
that was really popular. Like before YouTube, you'd put your list of shows that you had on a website or a spreadsheet, and you'd trade the list with other people, and they'd ask for 2 hours of stuff from you. You'd ask for 2 hours of stuff from them, and you'd mail tapes to each other, and you'd trade shows that way.
Yeah.
I Yeah, I
By
have
the
a
way,
lot. Uh huh.
oh, my friend Danny Lewis, he does games of training as well. I don't know if he got his friend request. I think he sent it to you, but you can send a question back if you want.
Oh,
He
okay.
does games of trading. That's what he does a lot, and he still does VHS tapes to this day. And I
I
don't
am
do
so
VHS
glad
tapes.
that there's. I'm so glad that there's somebody still doing that, because that is what
Yeah.
uh, that's what opened my eyes up to a whole other world of game shows beyond what was on Game Show Network and all that. And so I had a lot of these tapes that I used to watch all the time because I loved them, and
Yeah.
I remembered names of contestants from those shows, and I said, I wonder if they're on Facebook. And I
Hmm.
started searching for them and finding them, and it's really great to be able to send somebody a message that says, "Hey, I'm working with the National Archives of Game Show History. The podcast is being preserved in the archive. Would you like to talk to me about your experience?" It just sounds great, And so I was able to reach out to a lot of notable contestants. Tom McKee, who won 88 games of tic tac toe back in the 80s. Mark DiCarlo, who's a voiceover artist now, but was on Sale of the Century. Uh, I got to talk to Terry from The Price is Right, who gave the perfect bid back in
Oh
2000.
yes. Oh
Yeah,
my.
2000. Oh, was it 2010?
I got to interview Tess Lawson. Speaking of
Yeah, and I
which,
got to interview Ted as well. Yeah, I got to get his side of it, which I was actually surprised that so many people felt so strongly about that particular episode. Even years later, I remember that when I announced that I was talking to Ted, a lot of people were hoping that I was going to, get them
bring
on
both
Club
of them
together
together.
and make them argue and
Yeah.
make them fight. I said that is not my
No.
goal at all. So my goal is to uh, preserve the experience of the person that I'm talking to. I am not looking to start a fight at all. That is not who I am whatsoever. But
Yeah.
both of them were very gracious and told me a lot, and I'm you know. Not, not only them, but just so many other people, so many other notable contestants that I've gotten to talk to, and your listeners will hopefully tune in and listen to some of the
Yeah.
episodes that are there. But just an unbelievable time. But no, it was not easy at first to find guests. I found them, but
Yeah.
but it was definitely a challenge. It's a little less of a challenge now, but I have a list of people that I'm working on that I'm trying to find, um,
Oh
that
yeah.
I that it's sort of my pet project, but
Yeah.
it's never that easy. I appreciate the challenge.
Oh yes. And speaking of VHS, I don't really do VHS anymore, unfortunately, because I don't have that anymore. But I do have a bit box that helps me do the DVDs because copyright nowadays for some reason. But I want to show you this.
Sure, I'd love to see. Yeah.
Um, this right here. My favorite game show of all time is Deal No Deal, and I have a bunch of episodes right here.
Oh
A
wow,
bunch of them
that's
that I recorded.
amazing.
Yeah, like
So
back in
Deal or No Deal is
2017.
your favorite show? That's a great show.
Yep.
Do
Yes, it
you
is.
like do you like the US version better than the UK version? I feel like they're very different.
Yeah. There's a lot of differences. There's a lot more emotional in the UK version, and with me, it's the US version, which they're doing Deal No Deal Island in next year. I think I don't know how that's gonna work out, but no, right now, US is my favorite of all times. So
Wonderful. No, it's a great choice to show. I think Deal or No Deal is a wonderful show. I got to see that live back in 2009, I believe. It was taping in Connecticut for a season where I was living, and so I got to be in the audience of the syndicated version where, oh, what was it? And you might know, but it was during the syndicated version of Deal or No Deal. There was one like lucky case or something like that. Maybe I think they called somebody from the audience to stand there or something like that.
I'll have to double check on that one.
Okay, yeah, but it was I remember that they were calling people from the audience for like case number one. You could like stand there and hold that case, or
Oh,
something of that nature. But yeah, I had a wonderful time seeing that show. Yeah, it's a great show.
and what is your favorite game show of all time?
Press Your Luck will always hold a special place in my heart because that was if I think about that time with my mom, spending time with her when I was young watching game shows, that was the show that captured my imagination. It was,
Awesome.
yeah, it was everything. It's the lights and the music, and it's also a cartoon. I mean, it was just an incredible show, and Peter Tamarkin was a hero of mine growing up. Unfortunately, never got to talk to him or let him know, just how much he and his show has meant to me. But yeah, Press Your Luck was my absolute favorite. But as I got older,
Cool.
I started liking some of the other more obscure shows. I love Split Second. I love that they're doing a new version on Game Show Network. I think it's one of my favorite shows on TV right now. I love being able to watch foreign shows. I love shows from the UK like Countdown, Deal or No Deal, like you mentioned, Mastermind, Richard Osman's House of Games. I mean, I love game shows that make you think. I love puzzles and I love words and trivia, and so anything that's challenging like that is exactly what I like.
Awesome. And by the way, is this the your first podcast being interviewed on, or you've done shows that interviewed on before?
I've done a few in the past. When I was doing Stranger Than Christian, sometimes the guests that I had would say, "Hey, would you like to be on my show?" And so I do their show, and that was fun.
Okay.
I don't do too many interviews about the podcast itself, not for any reason, just because because I have.
Yeah.
But I think I might start doing more because this was very enjoyable. I had a wonderful time talking to you, and thank you for showing me your
Yes.
Deal or No Deal collection. I think that's very, very impressive, and it reminds me of
You're
back
welcome.
when I used to collect tapes. It's nice to see that somebody
Oh yes.
is still keeping that tradition alive.
Absolutely. And speaking of guests, what is some of your favorite tell us about yourself guests that you had?
Every time I have an interview for the show, I finish it and I hang up and I close my laptop and I think that was the best one I've ever done. And it happens every time. So I enjoy them all for their own reason. If I had to pick a couple favorites off the bat, the episode with Tom McKee, I thought he was just such a gentleman and he was so great to talk to and had such a sharp memory, remembered so many details and so many stories about his time on Tic Tac Toe. Um, that's one that was very special to me. I would also say that that episode was the first one for which I did a lot of preparation and a lot of research. I try to research a bit
Oh
going
yeah.
into each conversation, but there was just so much in the press about Tom back when he was winning all those games, and he had the record for game show winnings for so long. There was just so much to read and to keep up with, um, and I was so honored to have him on the show that I felt like I really needed to study up, and as a result, I think it just went really well. I also did an interview with a man named Obu, who was on Family Feud with Steve Harvey. And the
Hmm.
clip of him getting introduced by Steve Harvey went viral on YouTube. And I he was one of the people that I really wanted to speak to when I first started doing Tell Us About Yourself. And I got in touch with his agent in Atlanta,
Hmm.
who put me in touch with him, and we just had this beautiful conversation. He's just such a humble and positive and fun guy to talk to. Just such a sweet man, and I really had a wonderful time with him. But every episode I love to a certain degree. But those are two that stick out in my head as just some of my favorites.
This next question is about the game show that you're a part of. How did you get invited to that?
The Game Show, right? So that was the documentary series that was on ABC a little earlier this year, back in May. Um,
Yep.
that really, and I'm going to be honest here, that happened out of nowhere. I was at my computer one day and I got an email from a producer uh, that was with a production company in Canada. And they said that they were
Oh.
producing a series of documentaries about game shows and that they had read Buzzer Blog and that the way that I, in particular, write about game shows just felt very passionate, felt like I could talk, felt like I, knew what I was talking about, and they would love to have me involved. And so I said I would love to. And then I Googled them just to make sure that they were legit. And it turned out they were. They had produced the story of Late Night for CNN. They had done a couple other documentaries that I was familiar with as well. And so we had a Skype interview where they really just had me sort of
Skype.
doing
Oh
what I'm
my
doing
god.
right now. Well,
Sorry.
not Skype. I'm so. Oh my god, I'm so old. I mean Zoom. It was a Zoom interview.
Uh,
Where God, I'm really David. I'm so old. I'm so sorry.
I know. I
It
I
was a Zoom interview where we talked about. I was sort of doing exactly what I'm doing with you right now, just talking about how much I love game shows and some of my
yeah.
favorites. And they said, if we give you the name of a game show, could you just talk about it? And I said, yeah, you can. At this point in my life, I am confident that if you name a show, I can talk for however long you like about it. And so a couple weeks later, I had train tickets in my email, and they brought me to New York City, and it was actually over 2 days. The first day, I was in the studio for about 3 hours, and they had a list
Oof.
of questions that they were asking me. Again, sort of like what you're doing about each of the shows that I was on, and they had me talk more about the shows in particular. And that was about 3 hours. Well, it was supposed to be about two, but I guess they liked the way it was going, so they came to me and said, if we keep you for an hour and get you a later train, could you stay? I said, I would love to. So 3 hours. And then about a month later, I went back and recorded about another half hour worth of things. I guess, when they have questions that they think of afterwards, they bring you back to ask those questions. And so altogether, about 3.5 hours of me talking about game shows is what they got. And they recorded so much. I don't know if you or anyone who saw the show is
I did.
familiar with this aspect of it, but they got so much material that I would not be surprised if they did a second season of the Game Show. I talked
Mm.
about so many things that they did not bring up on the show,
Yeah.
and I don't know if they are or not, but if they wanted to, they definitely could because I think they have so much material, and it was great that it was people who loved game shows who were in charge of this thing. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was at home. I really had a wonderful time on the Game Show, and I'm glad that everybody who watched it seemed to enjoy it as well.
Oh yes. It was a very interesting documentary, and I really enjoyed it. Now, this next question is before we get to the last one. What do you think of the new upcoming Wheel of Fortune host Ryan Seacrest?
You know, I think Ryan Seacrest as host of Wheel of Fortune is a solid choice. I don't know that there are so many other people out there right now who would do that job. Um, well, there are talented hosts, but there's a certain, I think, name recognition that you need to have for the host of Wheel of Fortune, which is one of the most popular game shows that's ever been. You can't put somebody who people aren't familiar with on there. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how Ryan Seacrest does. I think that first of all, he's already in the he's already in the Merv Griffin Productions phone book because he hosted Click back in the late
Yeah.
'90s, and Merv liked him a lot. He was young, he was energetic, he was handsome, and he was good with the contestants, and that's really, you know, that's all you need in a game show host, barring age, of course. I think that being young or old isn't necessarily a barrier to that, but he
Hmm.
has that experience. He's been working so hard. I mean, if you look at how much television this man has done in the course
Also,
of
radio too.
yeah, television and radio. You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, he's worked with the best. He's worked with Dick Clark. He's worked with Merv Griffin. He hosted American Idol for so long. He's worked with
Yeah.
Kelly Ripa for so long. I mean, he's definitely put in the time required to gain that experience, and so I think it's well earned. I think it's a great choice. I know that some people don't feel that way, and I think that you have to see it in order to judge it, right? You have to be able to watch it. I think that in game
Hmm.
shows in particular, a lot of the times fans, and I'm guilty of this sometimes as well. A lot of the times fans will dismiss a show or not think it's going to be good just from hearing about it or just from hearing that they're rebooting so and so. They say, "Oh, it's not going to be as good as the." And I
Yeah.
felt that seeing game shows from this angle, being part of different productions, being a contestant, doing this podcast and talking to so many casting people and producers and coordinators and things. There are a lot of people, passionate, talented people who work on these shows, and so I
Yeah.
try to give them a fair shot, whenever possible. Um,
Oh yeah.
but but that being said, I think Ryan Seacrest is a wonderful choice. I'm really excited to see how he does. How do you feel about him?
I think he's a good choice. I just wonder how did he get the job without any host rotations like Jeopardy did, or tried to at least.
Well, I think that Jeopardy was different, and I think that
Trebek passed away. Yeah.
yeah, that's true. It was because Alex Trebek passed away, and I think that I don't know. I think that's a great question, and I think that the host situation with Jeopardy turned out to be a little embarrassing for them because it felt
Yeah.
like they didn't know how to make a decision. They didn't know who to pick, and they were going through this decision process on the air, and then they eventually went with Mark Richards. Or sorry, they eventually went with
And,
Mike Richards,
uh,
who was
well,
problematic in his own way.
and then went back to Ken Jennings as full
Right,
time.
right, 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 and then and then gave it to Mayim Bialik as well. And I think that Wheel of Fortune is a different kind of show than Jeopardy because Wheel of
True.
Fortune is a comfort show for a lot of different types of people. Jeopardy, and this is just my opinion, but Jeopardy I think appeals to very very smart people, people who don't mind.
Very hard show. I don't know how they
Yeah,
do it.
it's a very difficult show, and I think it appeals to people who like trivia and like general knowledge. I think Wheel of Fortune appeals to everybody, whether you're young or old, whether you know trivia or not. Wheel of Fortune is a show that you can watch and enjoy, and so to shake that up so much, I think would be a mistake. So I think that when Pat Sajak announced his retirement, Wheel of Fortune wanted to make a decision as quickly as possible to avoid that same situation with Jeopardy where they seem
Yeah.
unsure. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I agree that it would have been interesting to see other hosts get a shot at it. I got to see Wheel of Fortune live in Maryland about a year or so ago, and I got to watch
Maybe
Mark
that's how
Goldwasser
they.
host it. Yeah.
Maybe that's how they were thinking of the decisions for Real Fortune Live. Who knows? But
Yeah,
that's
and I honestly I thought Wheel of Fortune Live would have been a good opportunity to audition host, because you're
yeah.
getting host in front of big audiences of very diverse audiences. So you get to see how people react to them.
Yeah.
And I thought Mark L. Wahlberg did a wonderful job. But I'm
Hmm.
happy with the way Wheel of Fortune made a decision and stuck with it.
All right. Now, what is your goals for the future? Like, what are you doing for a living right now, and what is the next step, or are you going to continue what you're doing for a living?
Right now, my plan is to continue doing Tell Us About Yourself for as long as I have interest. I am having a wonderful time talking to former contestants, sharing
That's your full time
stories.
job.
Yeah, it's not my full time job. It's something that I do on the side. I work at a hotel as
Okay.
my day to day job that pays my bills. But um, I like to treat the things that I do, especially when it comes to broadcasting and game shows. I like to treat them like my job. I like to treat them seriously and treat them with respect
Yeah.
and discipline. I like to make my own schedule and stick with it. So I'll be doing the podcast for the foreseeable future. The second
Okay.
season starts on January 13th, and I already have some wonderful guests lined up that I'm really excited to share with everybody. I'm not recording right now just because I like to be home with my family for the holidays are coming up. November, December are very important to my
Connecticut,
family.
perhaps.
Right. Yeah, and I think that I'm just having a wonderful time doing the podcast. And so that's my plan for the foreseeable future. As projects come up, I will I auditioned for Jeopardy recently, so I hope that happens. But other than that, it's just having fun, enjoying game shows, being creative, and talking to nice people like you.
Well, this was a great interview, and by the way, I live close to Connecticut from Massachusetts, so I know I know the place where you used to live because that's where you're from. Now you live in Pennsylvania, I think.
Oh, wonderful!
Um,
Right? Yeah, 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 yeah. I lived
mhm.
in Connecticut for a very long time.
Yep. And that's gonna be it for the interview. And let's get to the closing. And that is going to be it for this episode of Chilling3000 Hangouts. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the Chilling3000 Network for great more content like this one.